Alrighty, Juanitosville, we're back with another quick little tutorial how to do bezels. We have a lot of new jewelry designers and jewelry makers out there that bezels is still kind of a mystery, and it's tricky, and it's still tricky for me. We're here trying to make our dreams come true, friends. If you guys can see here, I'm working with this piece of moonstone. It has a cool translucence to it. If you put it with the black background, you can really see the translucence. And if you have a background that's silver, the translucence isn't quite as noticeable. I think with this stone, I'm going to put liver of sulfur inside on the back plate once the bezel's on, and to have a black back plate, because I think it's going to let that make this stone pop just a little bit more. This is a bezel making tutorial. So what I did was I just wrapped some bezel wire around the stone. It is right here, 790299, plain bezel fine silver 3/16 30 gauge. 30 gauge is a little bit thinner than I typically like to use. I kind of like 26 or 28 gauge, but 30 gauge is very malleable, really easy to work. I basically have the bezel wrapped around the stone right there. I cut it with the shears to get it right at the right size. And typically what I'll do, guys, and let's just get into this, is I'll get my flat nose pliers, and then I'll just kind of press, because the shears kind of warp the edge of the bezel. So if you guys can see that, now it's pretty flat. Another technique that I recommend, I'll just file it. Microscopically, you're making a flat end on the end of that where your shears cut the bezel. It makes it want to be friends a little bit better. So then I give it the Andrew Berry bend, and I learned this from watching Andrew Berry. It's a little bit of an oval bend. And another tip too, guys, is if you have an oval stone like this, make the seam on the flattest end possible, not on the sharp end. Make it on the flat end. My instructor Melanie Klein, that's the way she taught me, and I just listen to what she says because she knows a lot more stuff than I do. So I go right here, guys, and I just kind of spend a little time getting it right lined up. And right there, it did pretty good right away. Look at that. So I will take this to my third hand. I'll take you guys over there, and then we'll throw some solder on this. And I'll tell you, I'll go through every process of it. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but I've done this a lot, and I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with it. So that's why I'm sharing. So right here in my soldering spot, I'm just looking at this bezel, and I feel pretty good about it. Okay. Here's a good tip. If it's a wide bezel like that, you can see how it's sloped. You want to make sure that it's sloped just right so that it's meeting up. It's good on this side, but on this side, it's not. So you really want to just look at it in its totality. Is that a big word? In its totality. My third hand. And I used to like to solder the inside. I'd have it upside down and I'd solder the inside, but what I've learned is sometimes the solder will pull up just on the inside of the seam. It'll pull, and it'll make it so that the bezel is harder right there, and it won't kind of hug the stone very nicely. So I've learned that I like to do it on the outside. Plus, if it's on the outside, I have more access to run my file on it or run sandpaper on it. I can sand it. I don't know if it's allergies or if I'm still suffering from I was sick, guys, and I haven't made a video like in 3 weeks. But excuse me. Okay, so I put some flux on there. And before I do anything else, I'm going to cook this flux off, because the flux will have a tendency to bubble just like that. And if I have my solder right where I want it, then that bubble will knock the solder off. Okay, friends, I zoomed you guys in a little bit because you really want to see this. Now I separate my solders, gray and blue. Gray is hard, blue is medium solder. And today I'm going to go with hard solder because it has a higher melting point. And whenever I put the bezel on the back plate, I use medium solder, and if I use medium solder here and hard solder later, then this seam is going to open during the process. So typically my instructor always taught me to go hard to medium. I've never used easy solder, only hard and medium almost exclusively, but for this we want to go hard, and then when we set it down we're going to go medium. So what I do is I get a flame like this. I have acetylene torch. This is a number 3 head. I get kind of an easy fire, guys. With fine silver and these bezels, you don't want a big flame. You want a nice, easy, small flame just like this. And then you feather. Then we're going to feather underneath. Boom, just like that. Let's take a quick look at that. It's not finished. I just want to point this out. Right at the very, very end right here, it didn't flow all the way to the end. And on this end, it didn't flow all the way to the end. So if that happens, you just reheat it. Because when you're first doing this, as soon as the solder bends or melts, you want to take the heat off, because if you don't have a lot of experience, you might overheat it and then melt your bezel, and it's going to ruin your day. So we're going to go over here. Boom, I filled that end. And for good measure for this video, guys, usually I'll do it from this side, but it's good practice to really have access to where you want the solder to flow. The solder will flow to the heat. So I'll just flip it around. That way I have access to it. Now the seam that it didn't run on is facing me, and I can bring the heat over here, and the solder will flow towards the heat. So we're going over this way. Okay. It looks like it didn't. So what I'm going to do is take a little tiny piece of hard solder. Sometimes this happens, guys, and it's okay because you can always clean this up later. So I'm going to put a little piece of solder right on that seam right there. Hope I'm zoomed in enough so you guys can see, and we're just going to give it some more love. Feather. Whoa. Okay, that didn't really work. Good. I'm glad you guys are here for this. This is going to be a little bit of a... These things can be pains in the butts, guys. We're going to go right here. It's because I heated this side of it before I heated this. You want both sides to come together. Come together. Now I did too far on that side. Dude, this is whack. I don't want to add any more solder. I just want to move this. Let's get this hot. It is not cooperating. Okay, let's look at that. Let's look at what my error was. Gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this again, and I'm going to try it again. If this happened to me in real life, which it is, this is what I would do. I would just cut it. I just cut it with the scissors. And then I'm going to flat file, like I discussed earlier, just to create a flat end. Microscopic flat end so they can be friends. Flat nose pliers to really get that flat. I'm glad you guys get to see this, because this is the main streets. Okay. A little drop. Let's try this again. Low flame, feather. Okay, I saw a little action there, guys, but now I'm a little gun shy, so I'm going to overdo it a little bit. It's kind of what I'm known for. Boom. Okay, guys. I hope you guys got to see that. Now that is wackest, crappiest bezel soldering job you'll ever see. So when you guys do it and it's easier, you guys will be like, dang, I did better than Benny. So now let's just show you guys how I clean this up. I have my rubber block right here. Okay, let's go right here. This is why I like the outside, because it's easier cleanup. So we're just going to go right here, and we're just going to just rub it. It's a lot of action. That's actually a pretty cool technique. Put your finger right where you want it and then hold it back with this finger. Today's years old, friends. Today's years old. There's a lot of solder on that. So I'm going to go a little deep on it just so I can see what that's looking like. Now, I'm not going to be too gung-ho about having this perfect right now, because I'm going to heat it again when I put the bezel on. Smooth out the tops and the bottoms, and typically what I'll do is I've seen figure eights. People do eights. I don't know why. Maybe that gives you like an even. I just do what I see on TV. And then under here now, when I rub my finger on it, it's nice and flat. And you want flat bottoms, so that it'll sit on your bezels very nicely. I'll probably have this on the top because I have more access to clean. I'll have this on the top and this on the bottom, so that's a nice fit. So once I have, I'm sorry guys, once I have it in the stone like this, I'll go to my rubber block and I'll just kind of massage it so that it really feels like it's home, you know. There. I want to push the stone through the top of the bezel, and then I just want to just kind of push it through the bottom and make sure that it's all friendly. So at this point, now we have our back plate. I already boomed the bottom of the back plate, and I hammered this with my mallet. It's a little kind of goofy like that right now. Maybe I'll give it a little bit of sanding to shape that down a little bit, but this is where it's going to sit. You guys are going to watch me solder this to the back plate, and that is really probably the hardest part. I made the bezel seem harder than it really is. It's not that hard, guys. It doesn't usually do that. But of course, right when I'm recording and I want to do a good video, this has to happen. All right, you jewelry rebel outlaws out there. Oh, geez. Right here, we have the back plate right here. I kind of sanded it. Just get it nice and smooth. I have my genius wire. This is what I call my genius wire. It separates. This is a very dense, thick block, and it sucks a lot of heat out of my piece. So I put a little wire, typically, to separate it from the block. I'm going to use some Fire Scoff. It's a product that I've recently been using to eliminate, or at least decrease, the chances of fire scale. This fire scale is my nemesis. So I heat this up a little bit. It says on the instructions to heat your piece up to 350 degrees before you administer the Fire Scoff Fire Scale Preventer. Now, I don't know if it prevents, but I guess let's find out. A little spray on that side. This is the side that's most important. A little spray on this side. Come on, Johnny. So now we have that flat end. I have my bezel with my messed up part towards the top, so I still have access to easily fix that and down the road. And I look around it, guys, and I can see some little spaces. Little space. And that's kind of typical. Very rarely, in my experience, am I able to get it so that it just sits perfectly flat. And my instructor, Melanie Klein, suggests that we work hard enough and spend time to really get that flat. And if it's really wonky, I'll work on it some more, but that's kind of typical of what I normally see. And I'll show you what I do here at this point. I'll put a little bit of flux of Mighty Flux. there and then here. Move it around so that it gets all around the perimeter. And it is, that flux creates like a liquid bond around the perimeter. And I'm going to show you guys a little technique that I use to get that to seal down. I'll go through with a little light feather flame, about like that, and I'll just dry it. I'll dry that flux, cook that flux. I haven't put any solder on it yet. I'm going to go right here. And then as that flux starts to cook, I'm going to press down. Just like that. And I'll press down over here. Cool. So that flux is cooked, and I will show you guys me pressing down. Now there is no light, and that flux acts as a little bit of a bonding agent. It's a very superficial bond. It's a very superficial bond, guys. It's not very strong. So that's what I do. And then I will get my medium solder, or my blue bowl medium solder, and I put solder around the perimeter. Now, my technique that I've really have been doing a lot lately is where the seam is, I'll put a nice generous piece of solder right at the foot of the seam, because it's gonna, the heat is gonna want to suck the solder out of that seam possibly, and I want to make sure there's some solder right there. So I put solder right at the seam, always. That's just my technique. And then I use my rotating table to really take a gander. Every solder butts up against the back plate and up against the bezel. So you want the solder to touch the bezel and the back plate, be tucked in that corner. Now I'm just throwing these little pieces in here right now, because I'll go through later with my solder pick, like this, and then I will move these. Okay, cool. Okay, I believe in that, guys. I'll typically do one of these numbers. I like to have my tweezers in my hand. I'm left-handed, so I have my tool in my left hand. My right hand has the torch. Your least dominant hand should have the torch, according to my training and my instruction that I received. Because you need to be more precise with your dominant hand. The torch doesn't need to be. You'll pick it up. You'll learn it. So okay, now I'm going here. I'm getting everything toasty. And what I'll do here is I'll go right here, and then I'll just, once it's toasty, I'll go like this. You guys just have to watch this. Boom, boom. Okay. Okay. Okay, that. Let's get this side. Boom. Okay, now I'll go like this, and I'll just kind of look at it, and I'm looking around the whole perimeter of it. I can see the solder come through this side. Let's see. Okay, I know I need a piece of solder right there, unless this can go. Okay. It looks like there's a little gap right there, so I'll take a small, tiny piece of solder and just put in this little area that it needs to be. Okay, that didn't really work. Okay, I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna heat it right here and pull that solder. The solder wants to go towards the heat. I can actually see a physical gap. And I think I sealed it. Yeah, it did. Okay, there's a little bit of a gap edge right here, edge. Boom. It ran. Okay, I'm looking around with the heat off. And everything looks good, guys. So let's take a quick look for you guys. Let's take a look. All the way, all the way. Meniscus. On the inside, you can see where the seam was. You can see that piece of solder melted right at the foot of where that seam was. And we have a nice meniscus all the way around the inside and all the way around the outside. But you got to have your tools and be ready to press and push down right when you need it. As you see it, I go a little bit on the bottom, then I go a little bit on the top, and I flash, and sometimes I go back and forth. And yeah, so I hope you guys just learn more from watching than me trying to explain it, because it's kind of difficult to explain. But yeah, let's clean this up. Let's take a quicker look at it, and then, or a closer look at it once the cleanup is done. Alrighty, Juanitosville, this is where we're at with this, guys. And so this is our bezel. This is our bezel. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. You can see, hopefully that light right there catches that. You can see that we have a nice meniscus. You can use a tool to smooth that out even nicer. It's going to hold the stone all the way to the promised land, friends. That stone is in there. I didn't press it all the way in there because I'm not quite ready for that yet, but yeah. And then your dental floss, guys. And when you're ready to pull it out, right there, friends. Just like that, guys. And then I'll saw on the outside of that black line to have a nice rim around the bezel. So yeah, guys, thanks for hanging out. I hope that was valuable to you. I'm glad that this messed up, and I'm glad that this worked out. The errors is where you learn the most, guys. How you hold the torch, how you use the pick, you never know what tip you're going to pick up when you're watching tutorials. But I hope this had value to you guys. If it did, please subscribe, guys. I have Juanitosville mugs in my shop. That's in the description. They make your bezels come out way better than this. It's if you drink out of one of these. I don't know if you know that or not, but that's not false advertising at all. Yeah, guys, so be brave out there, make your dreams come true, keep creating, leaning toward moving forward. You know how we do out here in these mean streets. I'm out. I'm Benny. Peace.